Alright, so let's try this for the third time. My name's Matthew Bottom, and I'm recording this for EDA 290. Um, Before the class started, I was very apprehensive about it. I wasn't sure what to expect. And I've always been of the mindset that, hey, if you're coming to the United States, guess what? We speak English, so, you need to learn English. And it's not that easy. It's not something that you just all of a sudden say, hey, I'm going to learn this. So, especially for children, looking at these kids, you learn throughout this class that this is not just a language learning experience. This is a completely new culture for some kids. And it's a culture shock for that matter. They're literally going from the only thing they know to having to learn a tremendous more amount of information. And even to the extent some of these kids, have dietary restrictions based on where they're from. And then you add all of that on top of adults basically saying, oh, by the way, you need to learn this language. So that really changed my thought process, especially when we were able to do the mentoring portion where I actually got to meet a little girl who was from Honduras and learned a little bit about her story and man, the things that she's been through. And to have to try to learn English on top of all the things that she's been through, it was impressive. She's a very impressive little girl. And so throughout this class, we learned different things, and some of the things that we've learned are, there's a magnitude of information in this class, and the amount of learning styles there are, the different theories there are on language acquisition, the way people learn a second language versus how they learn their first language. The different cultural shocks that there can be for a child, the different ways that different schools teach English as a second language learners, and the process that they go about. The local school that I did here, they have a Friday program where, and it's Friday for this school, but it's different days for each school in the district, and a one-on-one language instructor comes down and spends times with the English as a second language students, giving them an opportunity to have some one-on-one instructions, which is one of the examples that our book lists. Some other examples of the way schools do it is they'll have a curriculum based where several English as a second language learners or several students that are on the same level, which this school does too. This little girl that I mentored, her class was a third/fourth grade class, and each student in there was at a reading or writing level of a kindergartner. And so that gives the teacher an opportunity to where all the students are at the same level, and they're basically all starting from scratch. These kids have been speaking English, have been spoken English to for a long time, and then you have this English as a second language student who doesn't know any English, who was never taught English, who's from Honduras, but she's in a classroom environment where these students, even though they've heard it for a long time, still don't quite understand it. So they're all basically kind of learning it fresh from the beginning. And those are just a couple ways. There are several. I talked about second language acquisition, and there are several. You could record a video for 4 or 5 days on the different theories, it seemed like, once you got to that chapter. But some that stuck out for me were especially the behavioralism portions, because I do see that a lot in my children as a father. They're learning based on their behavior, based on their necessity. And I think a lot of people learn their first language that way. Most children, their first word is no. Whether it be in their native tongue or English or whatever, but the word no, and that's because they get told no all the time. No, don't do that. No, stop. No, 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 no. So after mama and dada, no is the next word. And the reason for that is because they've learned it through behavior. And I think in a second language that's key. My wife and I did a lot of the projects in this class together, and she told me, I remember taking Spanish, and she said the very first word I learned proficiently was the word for bathroom. And the whole purpose of that is because she knew if she went to the bathroom, she'd get out of Spanish class. So I think out of necessity, we learn things a little differently. When I was in the military, I went overseas, and I had to learn some of the Arabic language, and the whole purpose of that was to stay alive. And so, out of necessity, I still remember most of those phrases and words that were key to my survival. Throughout this class, I've learned a tremendous amount of information that pertains to how we teach these students. We need to have our classroom where we have cultural items in that classroom for all the kids of different cultures that we may have. We need to have different items that will allow each student to feel included. And what I mean by that is, you don't want a student that's from a different background and there's nothing in that classroom for them. From their culture. If you can find a way to connect with a student, that's one thing I learned in the mentoring. If you can find a way to connect with a student, connect with their culture, and then find a way to connect that culture to the English language, you have a path at that point to be able to teach the student English. Once you have that path, you should be able to teach the student English. And if you can do that, you will be successful. If you follow the guidelines that this class has laid out and that these 2 books that we had for this class laid out, you will be successful as an ESL teacher.